Hello, 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 and welcome to another One Lion of Code. I am One Lion, and this is a Monday that is kind of crazy. Not in a things are super busy kind of thing, just an energetic way, is what I'm gonna say. So, this. I'm still struggling over here on this computer. I'm gonna show code and stuff so that you have something to look at for a quick second. But I'm going to finish building this, and I cleaned out my bin and obj folders for all of the projects for this solution, and for some reason I'm not getting updated code. It's crazy. Not the one that's on screen, my work product. It's over here flashing at me. Oh my. So hello and welcome in. While that is loading for me, I am going to say hello to all of you. I hope you're doing well, having a fantastic Monday, and it's not starting off all weird and awkward like mine is. But may you have the best start of the week. Why aren't you running? Back at this, rebuild, back to, excuse me, this solution. Come on. You can do it. Okay, that one's built. I need this one to rebuild and hopefully pick up the new files. So, like you may have seen in Discord, I asked a question in the JavaScript room about an issue that I've been having with JavaScript isolation. Never seen a good way to build JavaScript stuff from inside a CS project. I prefer separating the JavaScript build from the .NET build to avoid issues like the one you're experiencing. But if you separate the JavaScript build from .NET, then you have to remember to run it and then put stuff in the CI and then remind the team that they have to do that. Yeah. Yes. So live coding gave me a good response in to my question, and I completely agree with this entire statement. So the thing is, while I was trying to create the minimum repository for reproducing this issue, I think I may have came up with an answer that still uses the CS proj to do the build. And that was simply, and I put this in the question. So the overall issue was when I was trying to build my JavaScript, build my TypeScript, compile the TypeScript into JavaScript. One more change. Transpile the TypeScript into JavaScript. It was giving me this kind of output with object-defined property exports. And then when I tried to use that in the app, then this is the error that I got. Exports is not defined. And I was like, okay, so then how do I get my TypeScript to transpile to JavaScript so that it doesn't use this object-defined property exports? Because one of the fixes is in your index.html to add a script const exports equals new object. Is to put this in your index.html. We have multiple projects that use the same library. So imagine that this is a Blazor component library, aka Razor class library, and that would mean that if other people want to use this, then they would need to remember to put this in their index.html or host.cs HTML, depending on if they're using Blazor server or anything else inversed. So it's like, I don't want people to have to do that. And so I was using a tsconfig.json file, and a whole bunch of the other answers were to do compiler options with target ES6, and then a few other settings if you wanted to set them, but this is like the minimum amount. And this would have it output the right way. And so I tried that, and I did the build. Come on, you can do it. Oh, I already did. And it ignored it. And then I deleted this and I recreated the project and I added the tsconfig.json file, added the ms build task, and nothing worked. So I think that this specific tsconfig file is for what live coding was talking about in the message that he responded with, which was if I'm using something like TSV, I think it's called TSV or TSC command line, so that I can compile or transpile my TypeScript to JavaScript. It would use the tsconfig for that. And I'm like, well, there's at least one setting that I'm using in the CS proj, and that setting was output directory. So what if all of those settings that I could set in my tsconfig file could also be set by using an element in my CS proj? And so I did that. And then I added the TypeScript target because that's the one that I found on. And I did like hours of research on this before I like just tried to create this minimum repository to recreate the issue. And as I was creating it, I came across a couple of documents that were helpful for putting this thing together. Here it is. And so I found this compiler options in MS Build for TypeScript. And I want to put that somewhere. Where do I want to put it? TypeScript and .NET. And so I found that one of those things is TypeScript target. So I decided to use that, and I told it to target ES6. And when I tell it to do that and then do a build, then it gives me a TypeScript or a JavaScript output that looks like this, which is what I was expecting to see. Once I did that in my app, in my work app, I ran into another issue where other TypeScript files were now compiling weirdly, and I was getting a different JavaScript error for those. For example, when I was trying to do my, I don't even know what to call this, your standard JavaScript interop thing that you may have learned when you were first doing Blazor with JavaScript interop, where you create a JavaScript file, you create a C# file, and then you have a static method where you can use the JS runtime to invoke that JavaScript function using some namespace dot function name. And the way that you do namespace in this case is window dot, yeah, here we go. Window dot this thingy. And then that's where you define all of your functions that you want to be available using JavaScript interop that way. So when I did that here, I was trying to create a TypeScript file that had window dot and then the name of the object that I want to use to have all of my functions that I want to be able to call from my C# static class for my JavaScript interrupt. And what ended up happening is when it didn't even compile, it just said, here's an issue. Full app funcs doesn't exist in window. And I'm like, yeah, but I can just do that with regular JavaScript, so why not? So then I tried this, and I don't remember when I got around to trying it this way, but at some point it worked, weirdly, in the original work product. But as I kept trying to use it now after making the change in the component library with the way that it compiled the JavaScript TypeScript, it started giving me errors saying I could not find that function, which is my, in this case, full app funcs dot do alert. And I'm like, what, why, when, how? So I did a whole bunch more research and found that in order to extend window to add properties to it, you just use this syntax. Interface, this object type has another property named the one that you're trying to add to it. And then when that compiles to ES6, that's when you get the window dot full app funcs working correctly. So it was a lot. It was a heck of a lot. And I spent maybe Thursday afternoon and then all day Friday and then this morning trying to figure this out. But hey, it's figured out. And we got it. So I felt bad about creating a repo in my GitHub for showing this issue when by the time I checked it in, it was solved. And I'm like, there is no issue. But yeah, the moral behind this story is if you want to do TypeScript for your JavaScript interop, either using, oh yeah, and then I guess we can show what that looks like now when both of them work, either using JavaScript isolation or by using the standard JavaScript interop approach, that you should configure your settings that you would normally use for tsconfig in the CS_proj file, which I already closed. Oh, no, I didn't. It's open right here. Using a property group. And then these are your, actually, these are all of your possible configurations. Did I close that too already? What did I do with it? Oh, it's right here. Wait, no, it's not. I closed it, is what happened. These are all of your possible configurations that you can put inside of the property group that you would normally do inside of a tsconfig file. So you can do stuff like generate map or tell it not to generate map, generate min, use strict. Yeah, bunches of stuff that you could set. Oh, Good VJ is here. Hello, Good VJ. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Mine started off really, really awkward. Like my intuition just felt completely wrong. It was like, it was just wrong. All of the things that I was like, I should follow that lead. Or I think because of the direction that this thing looks like it's going, that this is going to be the answer. And then it was just like way wrong and a whole bunch of stuff broke. And I just was like, I can't anything right now. And then I have this feeling of extreme anxiety that wasn't expecting because I had a pretty relaxed weekend. It was really nice. But suddenly I have like this chest compression, short of breath, and just all of the feelings that I get with anxiety. So it's crazy. Not sure where it's coming from. But I did end up figuring this out, which is awesome. And it kind of fell into place by itself. It didn't feel like anything that I did. So hopefully that's a good sign that my intuition is not completely shot. I just can't actively try to use it. Yeah. So there we go. Here is, yeah, I already showed that. The samples of using the JavaScript interop version of it versus the JavaScript isolation. So the difference between JavaScript isolation and JavaScript interop, for anyone who might not be familiar with it, is that the JavaScript interop is when you add a reference to your JavaScript file in your index.razor or host.cshtml. And when you reference it like this, then you have an accompanying C#. And you could still do this with JavaScript isolation, but the typical approach is with JavaScript interop that you have an accompanying C# static class that you wrap all of your JavaScript calls in. If you have any return types, then you get those return types back using the JS runtime. So that's JavaScript interop. And then JavaScript isolation is when a component uses an IJS object reference that it will load when it's used for the first time, and then that's when it keeps it in memory. And it loads it as a module. So the difference between how you write your JavaScript, or in this case TypeScript, is for JavaScript interop, you would use a property that you register to window and then put all of your functions that you want to expose to your C# class, that static class, inside of that. Update your Visual Studio. I did. You know how you can tell? If you go into Git Changes, you can now reference, or it has buttons and information about referencing issues from your GitHub. So that's one change that I saw. JavaScript color coding is what Scott is saying. Yeah, so that was JavaScript interop. You write it as pretty much an object that you put inside of your window, which is a global thing that you get for free in any browser. And then you put all of your functions as properties of that property. And then you can call them using that namespace, essentially is what it is, dot class name, so, or dot function name. So here it's function app funcs dot do alert versus JavaScript isolation, which is inside of your component. You create a reference, you import that module, sorry, you write your JavaScript as a module, which has a whole bunch of exports, export functions, export consts, export whatever you want to export and make available to anything that imports it. And in the component, then you load the JavaScript reference dynamically if it hasn't been loaded already. And then you still use JavaScript interop. You're just using that JS object reference, which is the contained module that has all of your functions that you're trying to use. And then you call the method directly instead of needing the other stuff. Plus, you don't need to use any kind of script tags in your index.html. So this is great if you want to have JavaScript functions inside of your component library that you're trying to share. That way, users won't have to remember to add a script tag to their index.html. Same thing with isolated CSS. Yeah, did you try the bracket colorization? I haven't tried anything with the new Visual Studio, with the updated Visual Studio, because I don't know what all has been updated. I just saw there was an update available. I pushed the update button and came back into Visual Studio. But anyway, that's my long and short of it for the JavaScript issue that I was having. Hello, Irish John Games. So I was thinking of updating the catnet emoji that Bob Ross so kindly made for us a million billion years ago. And I kind of want to do that now so that it matches the rest of them. Oh, oops. But while we're waiting for that, while I'm looking for it, I can tell you about the project that we've been working on. Oh yeah, and real quick, a shout out. I mean, all of you are most likely already following Irish John Games, but there is a shout out for him in case you're not. You can click the heart above there and you can start following him now. He is a fantastic, wonderful, amazing, and fun game developer working on a game called Rise of Piracy. Yeah, you know what? My bot is going. Never mind. My bot is going. So yeah, Rise of Piracy, which will be coming soon as Star. And Bob Ross is here too, and I was just talking about you. So if you haven't wishlisted it yet, there is a link to wishlist it on Steam. He's been actively working on it. You can watch him do the work on it on his stream, plus see him do all of these side things that are tangent to it, such as creating, I don't know what they're called in Unity, plugins. So creating shaders, creating tools, editor tools. He's also created a really cool tool called Help Me Place that's available in the asset store. I don't have a link for that, but if you feel like linking it, then do, among other things. What's so special about yours truly? I was talking about the CatNet logo that you created for us. And I think because I just recently added my profile picture as an emoji, because I got words. Let me squish this down just a little bit. Why does this feel like it's duplicated? It's not. I just have that many tabs open. Panel. Oh, maybe I didn't. Anyway, the logo thingy that my wife made for me. Oh, it's my YouTube one. That's what it is. YouTube at 11D Lion. Yeah, this one. Stop. I can hear you. Um, so this little logo thingy here, I took the head out, took out the background, and I turned it into an emoji. And so I'm like, now that I have two that are this purple, so Bob Ross also created the Blazor looking one. Why not make the catnet instead of white purple? Same shade of purple as the rest of it. And so I was trying to find the file that you sent to me, that you shared with me, which is in image projects, I think. Better from Barbarosso. Hey, it is. So here is the one without a background. And so what I think I'm going to do is put this in Photoshop. Who would have known an Nmap scan would take so long on my network. XSplit has an update. Of course you do, XSplit. Are you going to crash my stream like you did the other time you had an update? Scott says, next upcoming stream, May 22nd, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Game dev. Barbarossa says, be back in 5 minutes. So I'm going to select the pixels. I am going to create a mask using that selection. I think I'm going to create a mask using that selection. I am going to open the lion head, which is where? I may have deleted lion head. But I do have the original, so that's all that matters. Images, stream. Yep, sure do. Let's pick this one. Oops. Oops. I didn't mean to drop it in there. I just meant to open it. So that I can pick this purple and maybe this purple. So that I can create a gradient on a new layer. And that layer is going to be using the mask of the layer underneath. Wait, what just happened? Why are you black now? Okay, that was weird. It's just being a little laggy, that's all. And why didn't you keep my colors that I selected from over here? Why isn't it keeping these colors? Are you grayscale? No, it's RGB. What it's worth, I still hate JavaScript and PHP. Yeah, so I guess I should update my question. I did find a solution that I talked about on stream that still uses the CS proj to configure the typescript.ms build process thing. Okay, but I really agree with live codings. He likes being called Peter instead. With Peter's in the statement. Okay. You there? Why? Oh, suddenly I have my colors. All right. Gradient, please. Cancel. Make the gradient. Can we make you just a little bit thicker? How are we going to make it thicker without breaking things? Brush, X. Oh, it was black and white because I had the layer mask selected. Yeah, I don't think that I'd be able to do this very cleanly. Because it didn't really select the pixels the way that I wanted it to. What if I did select pixels? No, did I just push apply? Delete layer mask. Why are you? Oh, because duh, this layer is applying to only the pixels and ignoring the transparencies. Are you buffering? Let's hope not. It could be Photoshop. Oh, yeah, yeah. So that is something that did happen starting on Friday or something. Right. I changed my baud rate to 43K or 4.3K. Let me see if I can bump that back up to 6K. Output. Change it back to 6. Apply. Okay, we'll see if that does a thing. I was having major issues on Wednesday's stream where everything had an update that I didn't apply, and then I had to restart the computer and apply the updates, and then everything was working fine, but I forgot to change my bitrate back to 6K. So hopefully that fixes things. Yeah, I just need this thing to be darker. Okay, what do you look like small? Small. Ooh, I like that better. Oh, but it starts disappearing quickly. And did I just switch to default? Gradient. I don't think the gradient is working for this thing. I just need to pick a solid color. How about this one? Here. You're tested. Mine is instant. The problem is you. Wait, never mind. Hold. Never mind. The problem is me. Test. He's still testing it. All right, down to 3 seconds. So then, yes. Oh, wait, you changed to 360. Can you change back now that I changed the bit rate back to 6K? 6K kbps, which is 6 megs, right? All right. Okay. One more thing. Select pixels again. Brush. Okay. Does that make it look messy? Or is it still good? It still just doesn't look like it's going to be defined enough. But let's just turn it into a pink. At purple. No back. All right, 3-second latency, and then we'll see if you start buffering again. It was probably just my bit rate. Boo. How dare. I guess one other thing that I could have done to see this is create another layer underneath. That is black. And then another one that is white. Okay, so it looks good on white. On black, maybe it was a little bit too dark. Just not enough line definition. I really like this one though. This one. This one. It just looks pink, which I have nothing against pink. It's just not purple. There. I like that one. Do 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 do. Anyway, hi Peter. Hope you're well. Hope you're doing fantastic. Hope you're doing wonderful. Hope it's a good day for you. Same to you, Tyron. Same to you, Tyron. Oh, that is not no back. That has a background. Let's try that again. Okay, and once I do that, let's head on over to Twitch. Actually, can I have the folder path, please? Arigato momiji. And then I go here to what? Content. Settings. Viewer rewards. AdNet. And we swap out. How do I change? How do I change? I change the image that's being used. We'll just re-upload it. Why does that look like it has a background? Excuse me. Did you preserve transparency? PNG. You. PNG format options. Interlacing. I don't know. It doesn't have a background on my thingy. It doesn't have a background. We're fine. We're good. Catnet. Okay. We should be good to go. I will run away from you. Don't save. Welcome back to the stream, everybody. This is a stream where I do random things. I hope you're enjoying yourselves and having a good day so far. I mentioned at the top of the stream that my day is going awkward and weird, and I'm not 100% sure what exactly is going on with it, but it feels off. It feels unlucky, is the word that I used earlier to myself. Here we are anyway, doing the streaming, and I hope it's still going to be fun. We can now officially get started back up with the financial management tracker application. So the thing that we've been working on the stream is this financial management tracker application. And what it's for is what the actual project is for is to show the Blazor full stack development process that is reminiscent of what I used to be able to stream when I worked at a job where I could stream my everyday work. And that's using Blazor to create UI and using C# and very little JavaScript. And I say that, and here I am having issues with my JavaScript. And it was all because I could have just as easily used, instead of tsconfig, I don't even have any TypeScript in my Blazor UI. I don't even have the MS build tasks in my Blazor UI. But we just use a TypeScript target. TypeScript target, I think is what it's called. I shouldn't have closed the other project yet. I still needed that. I like it. Okay, what else is going on? What else? What else? What else? What else? I need this thing open here. I need that to close. There we go. I can still see chat. Chat can still see me. And TypeScript target. That's exactly what it was. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. That's exactly what I wanted. So if I have anything that I am actually going to use as TypeScript, then I will be able to build it. And it's going to cooperate the way that I want it to cooperate. Yada yada. We were working on a portion of this project. Oh yeah, so then the actual app itself, what it does is it allows you, as just a user who likes to track their own financial transactions, it allows you to input your accounts that you want to track and manually input any transactions that happen on those accounts. So for example, you buy something, then you put in a payment transaction. You deposit money into one of your tracked accounts, then you put in a deposit transaction. You transfer money between your tracked accounts, then you put in a transfer transaction. So I am loading the app. And here we are. App loaded. Or is it called bloated app? Something. No, it had an error. Is that what this is? An error? That's weird. So the the thing that I just fixed in my other app broke in this one. So we don't need it. It's okay. We're just going to find where our pages are, which is where? Here. We're going to get rid of this thing because we don't need it. Actually, that is kind of important. I need to make sure that it does load this correctly. That was my REPL. But the thing that I found out with Blazor REPL from Telerik is that you can't use JavaScript isolation because there's no way for you to reference the JavaScript file dynamically. Or there is a way, but you keep getting CORS errors, and I'm sure that there's something that they would trust in order for you to be able to import JavaScript files like this, but yeah. So I am interested to know what's going on with that. If if the end. That's all I wanted. At if. Nullable string or message. Oops. Then here, instead of debug assert, we're going to put the error message in here so that we can output it on our this thingy here. So if error not string is null or white space, then p. I don't think I have one of these, but just in case, output the error message, please. Okay, I don't know why I stopped the app to add that. I thought I was going to run in debug. Never mind, I know why I stopped the app. And that would be up here if we actually got it an error message. But we didn't get an error message this time. Instead, it just loaded the way that it was supposed to. Do I have... Is this app or is the Blazor version of this a progressive web app? Is that maybe what the situation is? Yes, it's a progressive web app. So what may have happened is I updated the JavaScript import and updated some DLLs, and the service worker said, I have a new version available. I'll download and install it, but it won't be active until the next time you run the app. And so it got new static files, cached them, and then when I ran the app this second time, it actually gave me all of my files, and it was able to find that JavaScript file, content, shared components. I don't see it. I don't see it. I honestly don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it's not showing up anywhere in there. So no clue, actually, why it is not erroring. Unless I took it out of index and never put it back. Obviously. Okay, did you try to load my interrupt this time? You did. You got... Why are you getting this version? Didn't... Well, if that's not confusing. But I'm still not seeing the p tag that would be printing out because it would have errored as soon as it loaded. Here. We'll find where the content is. Do the load thing. On click, handle, click, the end. And we'll do a private task handle click. We'll move this in there. Thank you so much for the follow, Ashish. Ashish. I really, really, really appreciate it. Hope you're having a fantastic Monday. And if you aren't, please let us know what's going on. Why isn't it a fantastic Monday? And if you are, then please let us know why. You save. Rebuild. Unless it was blocking the alert window from showing up without user interaction. That could have been a thing. Are you done loading? Oh, I didn't actually save the UI part. There. Exports is not defined. So that's what I'm trying to fix by adding the TypeScript target. Maybe this needs to be capitalized. Because the output is not supposed to look like this. The output it's not going to let me build. Let's see. The output is essentially supposed to look like this, but without the type. Come on, please. I do have MS Build. I have TypeScript include. And I have the output file and TypeScript target. Come on. You're supposed to get deleted. Ah, thank you, Scott. Scott has confirmed that the TypeScript element is case sensitive. All right, so if I do a rebuild, then maybe it'll clean out this JavaScript file and then recreate it, and it'll show as modified this time, and it'll look like this, as opposed to the use strict object.define property. Okay. Thank you, ChatGPT. I mean, Scott GPT. Arigatou gozaimasu. Give me my button. I want my $2. Hey, there's our alert dialog. Okay, so everything is fixed. The fix really does work. Again, if you want your TypeScript to be compiled when you build your solution or your project specifically, then add the TypeScript configuration stuff inside of your CS proj. And in case you would like the link that I was using for all of the possible configuration stuff and things that I keep closing, I didn't close it this time though. It'll open somewhere. Come on. Is gone for good. Good thing I bookmarked it. Programming. .NET. TypeScript and .NET. Okay. Here's the thing that I found that gives all of the possible elements with a backslash at the end, apparently. It's stupid that you can't delete messages. Anyway, delete the backslash from the end of the URL and it'll work. But these are essentially all of the, they seem to be all of the same options that you can specify in tsconfig. I just have not been able to get tsconfig to work in my .NET project unless you're going to manually use tsc command line to compile your JavaScript, TypeScript to JavaScript thing. Squinchy eyes. And I'm frozen. I'm back. Sure, recover it. And not only did it recover that file, but it closed all of my other open files. Yeah, that makes sense. And what are the chances that because I crashed Visual Studio like that, that the file did not get cleaned up, that it's still in use? Oh man, I was trying to pay attention to the thing that was on the Visual Studio channel not too long ago. It was something like micro UI, micro pages using Blazor. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that because it looked really interesting. Okay, so the thing that we were working on for this project that we were trying to show without it breaking this time though was index delete. I heard a thing. Somebody made a noise at me. Here's this. In the data entry pages, we have a whole bunch of drop-down lists that get populated by doing a query to the database. And you only do the query once when you come to these pages, and then it caches all of the drop-down list information in memory in state. And so anytime you switch pages to a different transaction type, for example, these lists are still being populated using the exact same accounts, for example, and these are deposit reasons, obviously. So the thing that we've been trying to hook up is a way to maintain these lists. Say I want to add a new payee, a new establishment that I could use my accounts to make purchases from. Then we would like some kind of UI. So we were able to successfully do that with the accounts themselves. So accounts are a special case, and so are payees, I guess, where an account, when you're filling in the information for creating a new one, you would fill in not only the name, but the type of account, which again, the account type would be another type of list that we would want to be able to maintain. As well as the date that you opened the account and the balance that you started. So it'll use the starting balance and the opening date to create a transaction, provided it can find the starting balance deposit reason. And if it can find a starting balance deposit reason, then it will use, again, the date that you specified and the amount that you put as the starting balance as a new deposit transaction. If it can't find it, then it gives you a message that says, I was able to create the account, but I wasn't able to set the starting balance because reasons. So if you want a starting balance, then create a transaction with the starting balance amount for that manually. And so that's what we got here. We have some examples of being able to see that. One issue that we ran into was when we added an account, it wasn't refreshing this list and this list, but we got that to work. So our question of the day, our cottage, is when we are going to make this list maintenance for everything else, should we have a similar functionality where you can click a plus sign button, which this looks more like a navigator kind of button, zero in target kind of button, but whatever. We can come up with better UI soon-ish. Should we create a button that you can click to be able to add new items to that list? Or should we have an entirely different section of the app where you can maintain all of these lists? I'm kind of leaning toward the second option. Hello, Goku Jax, and Bob Ross wants to know what everyone is up to today. I am working on battling whatever energies are happening that are trying to overwhelm me. Okay, what are you up to today? Now that you're done with your finals, GCSEs? I think you said you were done. I don't know what it's called. Finals. You still have tons of exams left. Ops. Maybe you didn't say you were done with all of them. I'm just making things up. You only finished the first week of them. Oh, ow. そうだね. Okay, since no opinions, I am going to go ahead and create another button that goes up here that when you click on it, it takes you to a page where you can see all of your lookup list types on the left and then be able to maintain them on the right. It's going to look terrible, but it's what I'm going to do. And so the way that I'm going to do that is what? We're going to go to the data entry page. And that means that now we're going to have, I still want payment entry to be my defaults. And this is going to be list management. Right, and I need to go through and make sure that I've been using localized strings for all of this. Is where? In my shared libraries localization resources. Like all of the new UI that we created for the accounts, I don't think that I was using localized strings. Yes, this is duplicate, but we're probably going to have something different when I get around to it for the actual button, maybe, and then one for the actual page. Currently uninstalling FIFA 22 and installing FIFA 23. Awesome. I used to play FIFA. What's the other one? No, I never played PES. Yeah, I think it was only FIFA on my PlayStation 3 back in university. At university, it was like FIFA 2004. Wait, what? We'll see if this displays the way that it's supposed to, but we'll give it a shot. Back in here, case entry type dot lookup dot list management, and we're going to create a new component called. It's actually a page, but so are these. So yeah, list. In Blazor Wasm, most of the time I inject more than one client repository in the Blazor page. For example, inject lectures repository and person repository. Is there a better way to call load any repository from one service as we do in unit of work? I also want to get the new Harry Potter game in Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Your name color is so similar to Goku Jax's that I thought that I was still reading Goku's message because I didn't read your name. I'm gonna call it list management page. I don't think that I like that, but that's what I'm gonna call it. So gosh, I don't think of not don't think of. I had it first. What's the phrase that I'm trying to use? I haven't had a need to want to do some kind of like overloaded injection like that. My initial inkling is to have both of your repositories inherit from iRepository or some kind of interface class that is common to both of them. And then you can set them up in your dependency injection so that you can have a list of possible concrete classes available when you request an iRepository. So let me see if I can give an example of that. So let's say that all of my services here had a base type called iService. And so all of them would implement, oops, iService. It doesn't really work for my iTransaction stuff. But let's say that I had, oh, I guess I do. I have an account service. I have two of them that directly inherit from iService. then when I am preparing them for dependency injection, I could do add service, add singletons type of iService new. Does this actually work? Essentially, I'm trying to provide an enumerable for all of my possible services that I could get. Wait, what's going on here? Those are my mono validators. I was like, something feels weird about this. Let's go into client, for example. Por ejemplo. Okay, this should look a little bit better. What kind of overloads do we get? Yeah, I'm assuming it would be done using this factory. Oh, right. That's probably what was going on. Yeah. And then when you do the request, I think, so this is all just like fuzzy and something that I may have seen in a video somewhere. But I believe you could do inject private I enumerable of I service. I'll do this since that's what's in here. But then the question is, you're still wanting a specific implementation of it when you're using it, right? So when you're about to use, for example, your lectures repository instead of your person's repository, then you would need to do some kind of check for services dot first services dot of type, I guess. And then this will be your concrete class, and then you'll get that one back, which kind of breaks dependency injection because now you're looking for a concrete class. Oh, unless you did I account service. Right. Right. My bad. You could do something like this. And then you could do some kind of account related thing there. I mean, if this works, then you could do it that way, but your goal is unit of work I don't know how unit of work applies to dependency injection in this way. How does having multiple injects violate unit of work? And then Bob Ross says, usually something like an automation tool, I would either use Python for simplicity or C for direct access to Win32 API. And then do you think it would be reasonable to use C# for an advanced automation tool that can automatically complete desktop tasks? Probably. I mean, it's definitely doable. Reasonable if you're skilled enough with using things like you were talking about, the pinvoke, the Win32 API. Because it's not that difficult to set up. You just set it up as an extern static and then link to the actual DLL, the Windows DLL that you need to use. And then there are tools out there for automatically generating all of your code. It does code generation with all of your extern static methods that you need. You just give it a list of methods that you want to use or entire namespaces that you want to use. But if you're already more skilled with using C or Python to automate like actual Windows things, then go with that. Okay, and then Goku Jax is saying, I mean like this. So here's your DAO. I mean, here's your repository. Here is your repositories. Generic repository of, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is definitely different than what I was thinking you meant. So I am doing something like this. I have currently 3 types of financial transactions. I have a deposit, I have a transfer, and I have a payment. But I have one service that handles all 3 of those. So you can consider this transaction entry service a repository per se. But I made it to where it is a generic, both client and server. Doesn't matter. I made it to where you can specify the actual entity type. So for a repository, it would be entity type or model type for that repository. So consider this to be my generic repository. Generic repository of T repository model type thing. And so the way that I set that up for dependency injection on the server, let's say, is I said you can register type of the generic iTransaction entry service, and on the server use this concrete generic transaction entry service. And so that will take any data entry model type that is constrained and perform the repository operations, the CRUD operations on it. And so when I am asking for one of those particular types, then I'm just specifying that specific type. But still, if I'm using multiple, then I would still need to put multiples. So I still don't know. Yeah, I still don't know if this is going to fit your need because you're wanting to reduce this to one statement, right? so that you get all of the possible iTransaction entry services of all of the possible types. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know why you would have to do that in order to not violate some principle, because it seems logical, or not logical to me. It seems like they are two separate concerns. Um, the dependency injection that you are requesting for the different what are these called? Dependencies? What's going on up in here? Everything. Um, yeah, it's weird to look at this one because this one is only using concrete and has nothing to do with dependency injection. That's where I'm getting caught up. So, if you wanted to do something similar to this, what you might do instead then is create a unit of work interface, because I would still do it as interfaces, an I unit of work, and that unit of work type will have all of your different possible repositories inside of it, just like this one does here. And you would dependency inject unit of work, and that's what you would request. The issue is that you're not getting the actual repository from dependency injection here. So in your constructor for unit of work, you would still need to request every single repository type that you could want in your application. Why you need so many repositories? I don't know. Elephant rhino. So yeah, the thing that you would dependency inject is unit of work, but you would also want to either new up a new repository within that unit of work for each repository type that you could want, or dependency inject those, which means that you still need to prepare those for dependency injection. And again, you still could use this syntax here so that you could just dependency inject or request one of these series. I have no idea. No, I'm kidding. I have an idea, but I don't use the repository pattern enough or at all, really, to tell you what a good definition for repositories is. So I'm not going to try too hard, I guess. But a repository is essentially, in the context of database operations, a repository is a class that handles all of the operations that you would want to do on a given entity. So your CRUD operations, maybe there is a specific way that you want to filter stuff. Maybe there is a common method that you want to use for adding data or removing data. So you don't want to use entity frameworks built-in .delete. Instead, you want to have a delete be where you mark a records delete Boolean column as true. So a soft delete. So that all goes in a repository so that it's done in a consistent way throughout whatever app uses that same database connection methodology, whatever. For me, that's covered by a combination of using Entity Framework and services. So Entity Framework is my repository. instead of me needing to say, put this repository on top of entity framework. And then my services just define, here's how you add something to this table using this service. But I think the difference between the service and the repository is that in a repository pattern, an entity can only have one repository class that tells you how to do anything with that entity. So my accounts table will only have one accounts repository that tells you exactly how to get data from it, how to turn that data into lookup lists, how to filter that data, how to add new data, delete data, update data, and that's one repository. In my service approach, I could have an account service that does all of those things for accounts, but I could also affect my accounts using lookup service if I wanted to. So there would be multiple services that could affect the same entity. Depending on needs. So that's my thought. And it's not that I don't recommend or do recommend repositories. I just don't know enough about the repository approach, the repository pattern. Yeah, regardless. I mean, all of my services are global. So for one, if you're using database connections directly in your Blazor WASM client side, I don't know that that is the correct place for it. Awesome. So Zuri's has been at his new job, new .NET job for 4.5 months now, which is past your 90-day. Yeah. 90-day probation period is what I would assume it was. It's really cool. Awesome. Grats for that. ICE service. Let's get rid of you. Let's undo the changes in these. So yeah, as far as what I'm comfortable with using, I'm used to using services. Because of how granular my services are, they are essentially the same as repositories. But I don't call them repositories because I'm using the same code on client side, and a repository to me communicates directly with the server side technology. Um, yeah, yeah. So that looks very much what this would be. The question is, how do you get your person repository inside of that unit of work class up here? Somewhere. So like all of these generic repositories would need the entity type, which I guess it's doing it by using the DB context. Yeah. So again, that would be a way that you would follow this. You have your DB context that gets dependency injected. That DB context has its own DB sets of each of your entity types. And your unit of work is the thing that you would set up to get dependency injected, where you're getting your DB context from dependency injection for that. And then you have each of your specifically requested entity repositories. But again, they are inline newing it. So you are not dependency injecting it. If you're using entity framework on the client side, again, it's possible that that's not where you should where you're intending to use it. I mean, I guess you would use it if you're using like SQLite. Yeah, it abstracts the underlying data storage, which again, Entity Framework does, and providing a consistent interface for interacting with data. This doesn't look like a ChatGPT response at all. Have you tried Bard, by the way? That'd be a good question to ask Bard and compare to what ChatGPT answered you. In .NET, what is the difference between a repository and a service? And making an API with GraphQL. So yeah, that's one thing that I noticed about GraphQL. Essentially, you're using the repository to do a repository pattern to set up all of your endpoints for GraphQL. Or it's one endpoint, but all of your queries that it maps to. Bard is Google's ChatGPT, or it's Google's Bing's use of OpenAI. Wow, this thing even gave a table. Services are more difficult to test than repositories? Interesting. So it's Bard, which I found is okay with giving you opinions. Yeah, and it's all in business logic too, versus the data layer. Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. Interesting. So you could still have a repository pattern with services. But anyway, just because of the verbiage that it's using here with everything about a service is more difficult to blah, it sounds like it is recommending repository, but it's good practice to use repository and a service layer. This will help you write more modular and maintainable code. Fine by me. Again, why would I want to rewrite all of my models and all of the entity framework generic stuff as it is when I'm given a DB context dot, and then each entity there, each DB set of entity is my repository that has the add, delete, update, get. And my business logic is where I'm telling it what to get. Live coding says, I am anti-repository pattern generally. I am here with the hot takes. Absolutely. And I mean, it's not that I'm anti myself. It's just that it feels like duplicate work when Entity Framework gives us the majority of the repository layer, and then our business logic in the service is the thing that tells you how to get data, how to get it, transform it, and send it back and forth. So HTTP client repo on client. Yeah. So that's, yeah, again, that sounds like business logic to me now that I have that verbiage. On the client side, for me, my implementations of these services is a HTTP request to an API endpoint. And that API endpoint has an API controller. And that API controller, the only thing that I do is dependency inject the service with all of the business logic needed to get accounts, for example. And that just calls the server-side implementation of the same interface that does the go to the repository, in my case, the DB context, dot accounts entity, And then here's how you get back data. So this method here, I would need to encapsulate inside of a repository class for accounts that also knows how to get the DB context. And so my service would just be use the repository to do this query. And so this would be something like all accounts query. Again, if you're using GraphQL, graphical, whatever you want to pronounce it like, then that makes sense to do because all of your query parameters are in the URL or in the body as JSON that say, here's the object, apply the transform to it. I think Marcus is saying, I think the main thing is when people are changing from one database provider to another, it's better to have a separate service with all of the business repository. Okay, that makes sense. That would be more important if you were switching from a relational database provider to a non-relational or not only SQL provider. Don't make your own GraphQL stuff unless you're Facebook. Because just about all of the SQL providers have the same methods. So you can still use Entity Framework with other providers, MariaDB, for example, or what's another popular one? Oracle, I guess, I would assume. You could still use the same Entity Framework setup for it. You just use a different repository provider instead of SQL. Or instead of SQL Server, is what I said. SQLite, SQL Server. They should all be able to use the same entity framework approach. But then when you get to something like MongoDB or Azure Cosmos, I said it, Cosmos DB, then you can't do stuff like .include, I don't think, or the same type of relationships you would normally do using, or lookups the way you would do it using this approach anyway. Yeah, read that. That's too small. And it didn't show up in my activity feed. Thank you for the follow. I'm refreshing my page so that I can get your name. Really swoosh. I like it. Thank you so much for the follow. Have you considered returning iCollection instead of IEnumerable for your methods? No, I haven't. Mostly because iCollection doesn't have the methods that I typically use. I mean, I use iCollection for my navigation properties in my entity framework setup models. So for example, a transaction an account type, dang it. Actually, why don't I have account in there? So what I would normally have is in my account type, I would have a virtual iCollection account so that if I ever wanted to, I could go from my account types and see all of the accounts that are of that account type. And so I would normally make that in iCollection for my navigation properties. So I don't know what the benefit would be of having an I collection instead of an I enumerable in my service functions, in my service methods, because I do more than just iterate through it. Because isn't I collection like the base of the base of the base of the base? So if I went through list, then that's an I list, which is an I collection of, which is an I enumerable of. So an I collection allows you to add clear contains versus I enumerable. So I enumerable is the base of 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 the base. Base. So then, yes, it is not always the case where I want my return type to have the dot add dot remove, the modifiability that you get from my collection. It could just be that I'm returning a read-only list. Dr. Frack says, only use I collection when you need to modify a collection I enumerable for when you just need the iterator. Okay, so I was backwards. I return list of blah. I know it was kind of non-answery as far as how to set up your repository in a unit of work kind of way, but hopefully that is you got enough information for possibly creating an I unit of work and an implementation for unit of work and have all of your repositories exposed through unit of work and then dependency injecting that unit of work. It's just the whole point of creating your repositories inside of that unit of work, the way that that doc that you provided shows. So here is your DB context. I have no idea how you get your DB context into this unit of work class. I would assume it gets dependency injected. Like I don't even see it in the constructor anywhere. Oh, no, it's right here. It's in line. So you're instantiating a new DB context without passing in any of the connection string information, which assumes that your DB context then has. That's what's confusing me. You're telling me that your context is a HTTP client, and I'm assuming it's a DB context. Otherwise, it's a HTTP client. I mean, I guess like I would call it something more like school client, which would extend HTTP client. Scott's confusion as well. So the concrete class is the class that consumes the API controller. Again, that's where I'm like, since it's living in the business logic, it's the methodology for how do I get data. To me, that means that if I implement it on the client side, that's where I'm implementing a service that uses a HTTP client. I mean, I could make a typed client. So that's what they are called. They're called typed HTTP clients. And I could have one for account client, which would be a HTTP client. And that would have a, I don't know what the term for this is. Is it boxed client? I don't know. Well, let's just do HTTP client for now, just to make it easier on myself. But you would essentially use a client factory. And then this would essentially be all of your possible calls that you can use using your account client. So a public, probably static, I don't know. It can't be static because we have this HTTP client here. So public, sure. um, yeah, we'll just do that for now. Okay, so essentially this to me is what I'm doing with my service when I implement it using the client side. The difference between this and just creating a typed client, which you can request. So now we can just ask for any HTTP client factory and then pull out the typed client from it. Then you can do dot all of the methods from that typed client is that I am also implementing an interface, account service. And that way, if I decide that I want to test it, then I would use a different implementation of my account service that not obfuscates, that just has dummy methods for everything but the thing that I want to test. Yeah, I've forgotten the majority of it too. Just want to collect all HTTP client repos in Blazor in one service, and I will inject that service. Give you unit of work as an example. Yeah, it just seems like to me unit of work is specific to database context. Yeah, because here the implementation of the repo is let's talk to the database directly. There isn't a thing to do with HTTP requests. So that's why it's like service might be the thing you're looking for instead of repo. Ooh, I did that backwards, didn't I? And so this would be add, this would be delete, this would be get, this is update. You could have an upsert. So essentially this is a repository. You can see that. It's just that the specific logic for the client side is implemented in the client library in the business logic. So my business logic says, I mean, I guess it could be the data layer because it's the HTTP request to do it, but because there's extra stuff that I do before the actual request is made sometimes, that it feels like business logic specific to this app. Yeah, Twitch client library would be a better example where you're using a HTTP client to do an API request, or you're using the Signal R, GPT, gRPC, some other kind of connection. Yeah, it's a HTTP client service. But yeah, I think that the official name of it is a typed client. But you would ask for, I'm pretty sure there's a way to get a client factory. And then you would do, you would save the client factory, and then you would, when you're about to use it, you would get a HTTP client from the client factory to do the request instead of creating a new client factory every single time. or reusing the same one for every single request. Yeah. And so one of your typed clients would be set up to use account client. So add HTTP client, angle bracket, account client. Hello, Napalm. Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa. Okay, this is an example of what Peter thinks. It is a lot of writing that I don't know if I could skim through fast enough. I didn't get a single thing done. I guess I created the component. Multiple consumers for our API. Yeah, so that's the biggest concern is if you have multiple things accessing the same API, then you want them to be able to do it in a consistent way, which means that you're essentially creating a class library on top of your API for this is how you get put, post, delete data from that API using the REST client NuGet. So you have one separate library that gets turned into a NuGet package, for example, that you can inject or that you can reference in all of your clients, and they will all use the same methods for getting that. We can easily see that, hopefully, in my project where this shared project, this client version of the shared project, and this server version of the project, these are all, well, like shared client and shared server both use shared, and so does this main application. A client would be a connected computer. So you in a browser, you in a desktop app, trying to access information from an API. So that would be a client. So these three projects here, actually these two projects here would become their own NuGet packages. The shared client is for any client that wants to ask for information from my API. Then they would use this and they would use these services from that client in order to access the data. That's kind of what you're trying to do. It's just that you would have one master service essentially that has the account, lookup, and transaction inside of it. So you only request that one unit of work service, whatever you want to call it. And then you would do .account.get, .lookup item service.get. And those would in turn do the HTTP request in the way that it should be done, including throwing new not implemented exceptions. Please rename unit of work to rename later to do. So again, this project is set up where I could just strip out all of my shared, create a NuGet package. This regular shared would be used inside of my application. So this is the only thing that my application would reference directly is just regular shared. Then my client side is the thing that would reference the client NuGet. And then the server side would reference the server NuGet. So I don't see, yeah, it's still difficult for me to know what to call this because they are still essentially repositories. Here's how I get data from my API and the possible ways for me to get data from the API. In my Blazor components, I never use a HTTP client directly. And if I had multiple APIs, that's when I would start using typed clients, not as services, but as different connections to different APIs. Yeah, so live coding is saying that this would be a really good Friday topic, community day topic, so that during the regular streams we could actually do the project work eventually. Hello, Jeeper. No more pictures. Use Discord and copy pasta. Oh wait, never mind. This is a good picture. I thought that you were doing another ChatGPT output. I don't like text as pictures. Blech. Instead, copy pasta into Discord and then send us a link to the Discord. I know, phone. I know. But here's an example that Scott has of the HTTP client usage. So I like these cache services. So are each of your HTTP clients essentially the same as this? Your HTTP client services are your client side. How do I go to the API endpoint? Yes, they are. So your HTTP client services are the same as what I'm just calling service. And the reason that I'm calling mine service by itself is because I like having one interface that defines what you can do inside of the app, and then however many implementations you need of that service, depending on how many different application types or trajectories or access methods that you have. For example, instead of having a client side method that uses HTTP, I could have one that uses signal R and sends, or RabbitMQ, for example, and sends messages to the queue, and then it receives a message and emits an event saying, I got a message back. I wish I had more time to do side projects. Adulting sucks. Yeah, we aren't even really doing a side project on the stream. Project Smogic. Smodrect. Sm- I think I need to hear what Goku Jax is saying live. And I think Feedback Cycle will get through the whole topic in 20 minutes max, as short as maybe 5, high bandwidth. Is it standard HTTP client or a third library? No idea. It's whatever HTTP client comes scaffolded with the Blazor WebAssembly project. I do call this a side project. It's just we haven't really been working on the project. We've been talking mostly and tangenting, which is what Fridays are for. Because like I've been stuck on needing to make these list management UI and function, or just the list management functionality. The UI is just going to be minimal at the moment for 40 episodes now. No. But that's where we're going to end our stream. Does anybody have experience using HTTP client with HTTPS proxy server? That's going to be a tough one. It should still look the same from the client side, shouldn't it? the client side will still just be doing .get from JSON, .post as JSON, etc. There may be some additional headers that you need to set up, but I haven't really done much with proxy servers. It's the actual server side that needs to be able to handle the incoming requests correctly. So the only way that I can imagine a proxy server would affect it is if the proxy happens on the outgoing request from the client to the internet. Maybe. I don't know though. I don't know for sure. We're going to go to this screen. It's a lovely screen, isn't it? Yeah, I think you're implementing a client SDK, and Peter put in a document building a client application that invokes REST requests to access a web API requires writing a significant amount of code. Yeah, and again, just the descriptions of these things sounds exactly the way that I am using services in my app on the client side specifically. So my client side implementations are just a whole bunch of HTTP client dot get from JSON, post as JSON, delete, and what's the other one? Put. But yeah, we can definitely discuss this more. I would prefer if we can discuss it more on a Friday stream, but hopefully Wednesday we will actually finish up at least the sketching out of the functionality for being able to maintain the lookup lists. And we'll pick that up on Wednesday, hopefully, and get that done pretty quickly. It shouldn't be too hard. We're just going to be using the same get, put, post, delete methods from our lookup list that we use in the account service, except without all of the additional stuff that you can do with account, such as, or that you need to do with creating a new account. Yeah. So we'll do that on Wednesday. And I hope you guys enjoyed your day. All the people that I was lurking on just now quit streaming. Hey, Dragon Spirit Games is streaming. He rated us on Friday. So let's go ahead and rate him back. If you feel like it, Dragon Spirit Games is a game developer, go figure, that uses Unity. I love watching Unity developers, so I'm going to have fun lurking on his channel. So definitely, if you feel like it, hang out with me. We'll rate them. Otherwise, I hope to see you again the next time we stream. And yeah, other than that, I will be posting this video to the YouTubes no sooner than 24 hours after I end the stream. And feel free to join our Discord if you have further questions, or if you want to continue that discussion, Goku, then, you know, Discord is definitely a better place to do it. There are people that are more familiar with the repository pattern and have more opinions on it than I do, especially if you can fully describe the situation in your own words in a longer format. Yeah, I won't be upset if you use a lot of words to describe it. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, and that's gonna be it for me for today. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you the next time I see you. Ciao for now.